That is that's an exquisite thing.
Yeah, that's a beauty.
They're so simple. And the lessons there are just enormous for a guy that knows what he's looking at.
Yeah, look how he uses the canvas and he just lets the canvas.
You bet. It's
come
like
through.
like that burlap
Yeah.
canvas almost, with a real heavy weave to it. But the thing is, there's no, with me, I'm still hunting and pecking a lot and putting on, no, that's not, scrape it off. I got to manipulate it here and there. There's an honesty and a direct virtuosity with his work that is so seldom seen. And I would have loved to have been able to watch him work, because I sense that he didn't really labor
No, he didn't.
over these things much.
He didn't.
He just put it on
Yep.
and knew.
Yep, he did. From what I can tell, and there's at least one video of him painting, and just from people that, like John Dixon, I've talked to, his dad, and he said, yep, he just went at it. He knew where his colors were. He knew he was very fast, very quick. You can tell when you look at it, it looks like it's quick too. I mean, in the sense of correct,
It does. But that you have a guy like Skip Whitcomb who has he works real slow. I've been with him when he's painting his.
Yeah. Yeah, there's people like that.
Like that. And you could do that way, but I don't sense he did.
No.
I think he was more slapdash. And you can tell by a couple of those strokes, they're just
Yeah.
and left.
Yeah, and even the one up above, that's 1915. That was done in the field. So we're talking with Bill Anton. We're just sitting here discussing Maynard Dixon paintings. For those who want to see what we're talking about, go to YouTube. Otherwise, you're just going to listen and you won't get to see the beautiful paintings. But that one up above from 1915, he probably did that in, I don't know, 20 minutes.
Well, and when you're working the sky, you better be that fast.
Yeah.
Because it changes awful fast. Way faster than the landscape does. Because they're moving in and of themselves, not just the light is moving, but they're moving.
Yes.
Or Mesa will stay there, and you can fake the light for a little bit, but a cloud changes shape every 5 seconds.
Yeah. In fact, so we're talking about Stirrup Up, which is a painting I just bought.
Stir it deep.
Stirrup Deep. We call it either one.
You can do whatever you want.
Stirrup Deep, and there's a reason for that, and I understand it because of the water. But
Yeah.
or you could have stirrups up because they don't want to get them wet. But I imagine a cowboy would care less.
Yeah, probably care less about it.
But on your little 10 by 12 that you did,
Yeah,
clouds. I looked at that compared to the 40 by 48.
right.
Very similar.
Yeah, those little paintings are so helpful to, first of all, when you don't really work exclusively from photographs, you're working with a number of other sources and imagination, and you've got this idea. You put it down on paper, okay, it looks good. Put up a full mock-up in black and white, okay, that still looks good, but I still got to see it in color because I just don't know if this is going to harmonize. The other thing that is so valuable about doing those little studies is you find out where the trouble is going to come from.
In what way?
Do I have enough information in my head, in my outdoor painting experience, in my sketches, to do a large mesa like that without really having all sorts of photographic reference that I may need? Photographic reference is really important, and I do have those things, but sometimes a large passage like that won't read in a certain color or with a certain horse in front of it or something like that, because what I really wanted to do in that painting was a backlit gray, because I think they're so reflective and they're so beautiful. So, but I wanted to put that mesa behind it, but is it going to work? I don't know. So I have to see it down in color first, and then those little things, as I said, will tell me where are the problem areas going to be. What do I really need to explore a little bit further in the larger one to be able to pull it off? Because when you go from 8 by 10 to 40-48, that's a huge jump.
Yeah.
So you better have enough information to fill in those gaps, because when you're doing a little sketch, they're fun to leave a little bit undone, and there might be a couple of few specks where the raw canvas is coming through.
Mm-hmm.
When you turn that into 40-48, that speck is like that, and you can't have that. So you have to have enough information to complete the whole thing.
And it was there. I mean, I looked at it. I mean, I looked closely. I mean, the back canyon was pretty much filled in. There was one little spot that maybe almost looked like there was a little arch or something, but other than that, it was really complete.
The the thing about painting Western paintings is, and especially if you are a sort of a natural landscape painter.
And would you say you are?
I would say that I am. I would say that it comes
too, actually.
easier
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful about subordinating that background because, as you know, the geography of the West, and particularly central and southern Utah, is so stunning that it can take over a painting no matter what's going on, and you can have that dual interest fighting with each other. So you have to figure out a way, how am I going to make this interesting and still subdue it enough, knock it back so it's a foil for the figures and nothing more, not an end in itself, because if it starts becoming an end in itself, then you've got a dual interest and maybe a problem with the painting.
Mm. So when you did that painting, you have 3 riders in it,
Yeah.
very similar to what you have in the big painting. Were those real riders there?
Yeah.
I assume.
Oh, in that, no,
Yep.
no. That was up near my house. We were splashing through water, and sometimes I will ask a guy to come through that creek and let me see what I can get down here with a brush or take a number of photos or something like that. But no, almost never are my figures where they actually were when I first either photographed them or sketched them. Almost never. Sometimes they are. I tried to. I did a little 8x10 of the very background. Just didn't do it for me.
Of that piece?
Yep.
With riders?
Yep.
I'll be
Same
Yeah.
same figures. And it's just the same arrangement, everything.
Yeah.
And of course, I arranged the figures
Right.
because that wasn't what I was looking at either. They were usually individually shot coming through the water or something like that. But I put in the background they were actually in, and it just...
What do you think that is?
do it
Why
for
was
me.
that?
Sometimes shadowed country behind a shadowed figure just envelops the figure too much. But when you had an opportunity to paint one of those Red Rock mesas, I could sink it back as far as I wanted and not have it overshadow. And I don't mean in terms of size, but in terms of the darkness and the depth of the color going on. Wasn't going to fight because, as you know, how reflective that stuff is.
Mhm.
And it has the ability to just take over.
Yeah.
So you have to knock it back. But for some reason, in that country that I live, Matt Smith, my friend, he doesn't like to come up and paint that country very much because it is really disorganized, jumbled, and complex, and then coupled with the fact that it's often drought-stricken, it's gnarled, and boy, you have to simplify like crazy. Sometimes I'll go out with him and I'll look at the stuff he paints and I don't have to change anything. It is right there. It's beautiful. You can move a few things around,
Right.
but this stuff where I live, it's granite country with pinon and juniper mixed into these oddly shaped boulders, and they can be just crazy jumbles of stuff. So you've got to do a lot of simplification, and in that particular case, the simplification just wasn't happening
On this particular
on
piece.
that particular piece. So I changed it and just did it with a big flat mesa behind.
Did you know you were going to do it big when you did that? A big painting?
No,
like
I
that?
never know that.
I wouldn't think you would.
I
but-
never know until I see it down. Is there a potential for something large, or do I have to keep this small and minimize it, or at least make it where it's a little bit more manageable? But I like painting large paintings because I've got elbow room, and it gives me, if I want to use a brush that wide, then I can. That's a little tough on a 9x12.
Yeah. Well, your painting was the study was a complex painting when I looked at it. I
okay.
mean, it is complex in the sense of there was a lot going on. Even the riders, you could see how they were doing their hands and, and the horses and what they were doing. And it reminded me of a little Frank Tinney,
Wow.
Yeah, it did, because I've seen a lot of little Frank Tinneys that he did in that. He did like 10x14s.
Yeah.
And they had that same. I mean, if you snuck Frank Tinney Johnson's name on there, there would be people that would believe that was little Frank Tinney.
Well, I'm not even going to comment on that.
On the sneak the name on or the comparison.
Not even going to go
Especially in the foreground, right? We're in the foreground where you not the water, but just that
little ledge of
ledge of
that guy. I used to think when I was younger that impressionistic painting always had to be thick paint, but he would do these transparent flicks of stuff, and you didn't know. Sometimes he would glaze over the top of them, and sometimes he wouldn't. But I've seen a couple of those foregrounds of maybe a 1620 study or something that he did, and they're just swatches of transparent color, and they're very, very loose, but the paint is not thick. And sometimes he would do them where they're paper thin all over. You know, he just sort of a wizard with a brush in his hand. And I think his specialty, and I think Edgar Payne even said this in Composition of Outdoor Painting, that skill with pigment was one of Johnson's real skills.
Yeah.
Other than tremendous drawing and great ideas and
Right. Great compositions.
yeah, great compositions. Yeah, and the solidity of his drawing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I bought 50 of his little studies once. That all came from Vinnie Johnson and their framer.
Yeah.
And they were, yeah, I was Matt Smith got one of them. I traded him one of his paintings for that.
What is it? What,
Can't remember. It'll be mine though. I almost guarantee it.
he's got a big Seascape FTJ.
Yeah, I think I may have sold him that too. I think I sold him a couple.
It's
actually.
unsigned, but there's no
yeah.
doubt.
Oh yeah, no.
No doubt.
Well, Matt came in there and he was smart, and this was even before I represented him. But I mean, he immediately saw, oh my God, look at all these beautiful, landscapes and things.
Yeah. Those things he did up at Rimrock Ranch,
Yeah,
which is a great place to go.
yeah.
Great place to go.
And so when you do your work, is most of it around your house in that area within a 50-mile radius? Kind
Most of the guys are, because I've got the ORO north of us, about 60 miles. There's places up in Flagstaff. There's a ranch I used to go to, or I still do, in outside of Kingman. So yeah, I would say that the cowboys themselves, for the most part, are as Arizona. I've done a lot of Montana as well, but for the most part, it's Arizona guys and horses. But sometimes the country in Arizona can be a little bit on the bland side for me, and I don't know what it is, but I just really love painting mountain ranges and things like that. You can certainly do that in Arizona. So some of it's generally not out my back door. Now, I have done Granite Mountain a number of times, and it's appeared in a lot of my paintings. But maybe it's the fact that I just want to do something a little bit more exotic, that for the most part there are places other than right out my back door. But one of the great things, Mark, about living where I do live is because of that, what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. It's so complex. It forces you to simplify. You have to, because it's such a jumble of stuff that you have to, instead of painting 75 boulders all sort of folding over one another, you have to simplify 2/3 of that and maybe do a little suggestion of that jumble, and then simplify again, and then rearrange some of the vegetation. And
does that happen in the secondary process after you've already done the plein air painting, or it happens at both?
Actually, I think because I've got so much experience painting outside the back door there, I can do that out of my head now.
Yeah.
Because what's painting? It's problem solving.
Yeah.
It's a lot of problem solving. And once you've been out there frustrating yourself like wild, trying to get this stuff down the way it appears, then you realize, you're beating your head against the wall. What you need to do is look at this and do it in an economic way where you're simplifying your the scene that is very complex and maybe even doesn't make much visual sense. Wasn't it John F. Carlson that said, "Never take nature as stupidly as you find it"? It was made for some of that country back there. So if I don't have a reference for it, it doesn't matter, because I've had to dig myself out of messes outside so often, and some of it had to be improvised. So hopefully I've gotten pretty good at improvising in the studio as well.
Do you sell those little studies, or do you hang on to them as reference?
It depends on what they are. If it's a straight landscape, sometimes I'll sell them. If it's a real, real good one, I never sell them.
Yeah.
If it's one that I don't even believe I painted that, it'll end up on my wall.
And you're keeping it because this is a really successful. I did something super successful here.
Yeah, really proud of this one. I like looking at it. I could never replace it, and I could never whatever money you would get for it.
Yeah,
ain't worth it.
Yeah, because you can feel it. You know the sense. You were there. You can when you look at that little drawing or little painting.
You can remember what you were thinking about.
Yeah, I bet.
Sure, it's like a diary.
Yeah, it is, right?
It's like reading a diary.
Yeah.
Just take you right back to that spot.
And I would think it would help too that you can go look at it and go, this is how I figured it out and this is how I got it good.
I think what it does for me is sometimes, when you're in the studio and you've got a lot of visual aids to help you and you're not on the clock and you're not under the gun and the sun is not moving and the wind isn't blowing, you can take all the time you need to manufacture a result. When you're doing a live performance and it all goes right, that's pretty rare. The most consistent guy I ever saw outside is Matt. Matt's 9 out of 10. He's coming home where you can't tell the difference between what you were looking at one of his paintings. It's like,
yeah.
But the times that happens to me is not, and I don't paint out as religiously outside as I used to. So, and it's like that is a skill that if you don't keep up on, man, can you lose it fast.
I believe it.
It takes me 2 or 3 weeks to get back into stroke outside of every day going out.
Yeah, it's
Before
like,
I get back.
golf or fly fishing
right.
or anything
That's
else.
right.
That's
right.
Just
it's something you really got to keep up on. And then after I met Ned, then I started
Jacobs, right?
Jacob, Ned Jacob. I went out and started painting horses from life. And so a lot of the times I wasn't even doing landscape anymore. I was simply focusing on the horse from life. And so that kind of diminished my landscape skills a little bit. So so when you do go out and you do get one, for me, they're not worth selling. You got to keep them. And just to remind you that, and what I was getting at before is you got all these visual aids in the studio, but those make you feel like a real artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes, I haven't talked to too many guys who do what we do, who aren't really very, very humble. And you'll hear this from a lot of them. I wonder when they're going to find me out. And those little paintings, when they're successful, say to you, you know what? You can do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's to keep those around.
Yeah.
You need them for in here. You need them for in here.
Yeah, I've gotten a
validation.
Couple out of Stephen Datz that were like those types.
Yeah.
And, and I could tell it hurt him a little bit to sell them.
Oh, yeah. You don't, if it's a real killer, it's best keep those around. And all those little studies that I have of the big paintings, like the one we were talking about of Stuart Deep, the kids are going to inherit those.
Yeah.
I don't sell those at all.
Yeah.
Every now and again, a special collector will get one.
Yeah. And I would think occasionally if you did a big major painting, you might, if the collector really wanted the small one that went with it, you might allow it. Yeah.
It's happened a time or two.
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah.
Not that you want to, but you kind of almost feel an obligation because they get it so much that they want to see what the other thing is.
I agree.
And in this podcast, what we'll do is we'll actually show a picture of that.
Mm-hmm.
But NFS, right on that one, unless he tells me different. We'll sell the big one, but the little one you'll just have to see a picture of.
I go back into the storeroom in the studio, and I must have 200 or 300 of those things.
I bet.
Yeah.
I've seen that in other artists, John Moyers and Terry Moyers, they'll keep their best. And, Ed Mell keeps his best little ones. He's got a ton of them. I think it's smart as an artist to do that.
Of the finished paintings, I probably only have, of landscapes, probably 5 or 6 or 8 that I've kept. But of all the studies for the larger oils, I've just kept. And the other reason, of course, is, and this was brought home to me by a dealer who made the point. And I thought, boy, that's a good point. I never thought of that. If you start selling those little studies, most of them are unfinished. There's no reins, there's no bridles, there's no just a swatch for the face. And sometimes they will fall into the hands of somebody you didn't intend it for, and they'll throw it up at auction as a finished painting. And it's not a finished painting. It was never intended to be a finished painting.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that
once they leave, you can't control what happens.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
And I'm sure all those little Frank Tinneys, those had all come from Vinny and, his widow. So he had done those. He liked those. He kept them for his references. He was doing it. And Dixon kept them as well.
Yeah.
It's just, and there are also times and moments that you can remember, where you were
Exactly.
in that time frame
Yeah.
and doing
Because
it.
at the end of the day, we do this because we love it.
Yeah.
And there's something about you could smell the sage. Again, it'll come back. I have one that I did in Death Valley that is hanging on my living room wall. It's just a little 9x12, but I was on my game
Yeah.
for some reason, and I look at that thing and I go, I can't even believe I did that on the spot. It's not like it's some brilliant thing that should be hanging in the Louvre, but it's got everything I shoot for, and the sun was tracking at the same time. So those are wins for me.
Yeah. Have you found that your skill set, I know you said if you don't keep it up, it doesn't translate, but do you find your skill set to be as good as it was when you're in your 30s or 40s?
I think they're better than my 30s. 40s, I was starting to hit some pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
I would say the major difference now is they tend to be a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more complex, and maybe there's some areas that are not left unaddressed, or maybe I try not to wow myself with a big fat lick of paint, where when I was in my 40s, I was really majoring on a lot of that stuff. So I don't really, I don't spend a lot of time analyzing it, but I have noticed that when I go out with these guys that are doing that all the time, I'm playing catch up for a while.
Well, part of it, I think, is a young man's sport in a little bit of a way, or young girl sport in the sense that, to get out there and do it, and really do it a lot, it takes some rigor.
It takes some rigor. I would say that, I don't have the energy level that I did at one time, but it really is just a matter of seeing and getting it down fast and being used to working fast. We've talked about this before about my sloppiness, and my butterflies are falling off the French easel and I'm picking them up. Oh, I got a goop of orange on my hat, and Matt's finished.
Yeah.
He just set up, and I'm just starting to lay stuff out. So a lot of it is, have you honed it down your kit to where, or if you're pulling it out once every, 2 or 3 months, there's spiders crawling in it. You got to clean up stuff that you didn't take care of last time. If you're an inveterate outdoor painter and that's all you're doing, then it's like clockwork.
It's just like fishing.
Yeah.
Are your flies all where they're supposed to be?
Yeah,
Do you have your geek?
Exactly.
Everything? Or you just haven't been out in a year and you're trying to throw it together? Yeah. I get it. Yeah. But your studio work, in my opinion, is hitting at its highest mark ever.
Well, I sure hope so. It's supposed to be. I mean, this is the time right now.
No, it is.
I'm about 64, 65 years old.
Yep, and that's usually
should be my height.
Yep, that's right. 65 to 70, I think, is really when people nail it. And you have a museum show, and we can talk about this now because it's the right time.
Yeah, that's right. It's coming up, isn't it? Yeah.
That you have a one-man exhibit show at the Wickenburg at Desert Caballeros. When does that open? In December?
I want to say that there's a soft opening around the 19th, and I think there's something a little bit more formal towards the end of January.
So, but it is December, right?
Soft opening, I believe, in late December. Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think what we're doing is we're collecting paintings that they asked me to, sort of locate collectors that have Arizona paintings.
Yeah.
They wanted things that were largely Arizona or at least Southwest flavor. So I got lists of people, and we gave that to them, and of course then that was supposed to happen a year ago, and then it all went to the wayside. But what I would like to do with that show is show a lot of the little studies next to the big paintings.
Oh, you should pull them off your wall.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
And how many paintings do you think will be in that show?
If everybody who signed on last year does, my guess is there should be around 30 or 40, but I'm not sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you done a big major retrospeective?
No, I never have.
Yeah.
I've never done a
That's surprising, actually, that you haven't.
I never have. No.
This may be one of many.
Well, people have talked to me about it before, but my smart-ass response is usually, what, already?
Yeah, so, right. Am I that old?
Yeah, right. But yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah, it definitely will not be the last. I have no doubt about that. And they bought a major painting from us.
They did.
That
They did.
Let's talk about that little painting too, because that's
Yeah.
an important painting.
Now that was a good study. Because
I
when
bet.
I did that 10-12, I went, okay, I got something here. And I was real happy with that. But that was that sort of that same country, that central and southern Utah. Man, if you like to paint rock, or you like interesting formations or an environment to put the figure where you've got all sorts of interesting patterns and light conditions, man, you just can't beat that place.
Yeah.
And I was up there painting on location too, and I was getting okay things, but they weren't terrific. There was only one or two that came out of that trip that I thought were really worth a darn. But the other ones would have a couple square inches of the truth that I couldn't get any other way.
Yeah.
So I kept them around.
Yeah.
They didn't hang together as finished works, but they had a couple of little something going on. That's a really interesting color combination. I never would have come up with that in the studio, and that's really why you do it, because if you're fairly accurate outside or interpreting things correctly, you'll come up with things on the out on location that you'll never come up with in the studio.
I believe that.
Colors,
Yeah.
harmonies that you just wouldn't even go there
Yeah.
for some reason. It just doesn't occur to you.
Well, different senses. You're taking it all in: smells, taste,
Yeah.
vision.
Yeah,
It all. It's like writers. If I want to write about the Navajo Nation, I can write about it in my head, but I'll do a lot better if I go to the place and see it. And it may be a little thing: a guy walking down a road.
yeah.
Or sand blowing at the trash can down the road.
No, it's true.
All those things I think give you a sense of setting, and you're basically a writer who's putting down the setting by paint.
You want to do things that excite you.
Yeah.
And you'll come across something or see something, "Boy, that's really visually impactful. I want to get that down." But I remember looking at a lot of studies after it, and I'd bring them back in the studio and look at them and go, I never would have come up with that in here. It just wouldn't happen.
Yeah. You can visualize it.
There's something about the air that when air gets into your painting,
Yeah.
that's a whole different thing than working in a studio.
I would say it gets into your soul.
Yeah.
Honestly. I bet
Yeah.
you dream about it too.
Yeah. When
whether
you see
know it or
somebody
not.
who, like, I remember I was looking at a painting of Ralph Oberg's one time, and I said, Ralph, that thing's got air in it.
Yeah.
And there were, and it was a studio oil, and there were people listening. And it was really interesting because they came up and said, I've never heard anybody say anything like that, but it's really true. That thing had air.
Yeah.
You could tell that you were traveling through miles of hemlock scented air to get to that distant peak out there. It was really.
You quoted it right
He-
here.
he
You
nailed
coined it. Now everybody will know that was your when you hear that.
Most
You got
of-
air. I'm going to
anything-
use that actually.
Anything I have ever said, believe me, I got from somebody else.
I've never heard that term like that. Yeah.
Mike Lynch used to talk about that. Get some air into that.
Yeah.
And I think what he meant was just sink that thing down so there's that mesa back there, so there's atmosphere between you and it.
Yeah.
You see how much grayer it is? Look at the relationship between that and this over here, and then you start studying that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Josh Elliott's good at that.
Josh Elliott's a terrific painter.
Yeah.
And a
he
great
is.
guy.
Yeah, he really is. I have many of his paintings in
No,
my
he's
house.
terrific. Wish I did.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you represent him, you can do that. We'll have a show for him. I don't know, probably not until next year, but my God, we have one almost every year, but I think
It's not good for you, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's just terrific.
He is terrific. I still remember a painting he had at the Phoenix Art Museum. Remember the West Select
Mhm.
show?
Oh, yeah.
He had one of a moonscape with a hay rake moonscape. The moon was coming up. It
Yeah.
was dusk, and there was a big hay rake in the field, and that thing was a heart stopper. It was a big painting. It was
Yeah.
about a 40 square.
Yeah.
It was a cruncher. Couldn't believe it didn't walk away with everything they had. It might have won something. I don't
Yeah.
remember. I just remember I didn't come home with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great show. It's a shame.
It was a good
they
show.
don't have
Yeah.
anything like that.
No, I know, and I don't really know what that was about because it was one of the more eclectic shows.
It
that I
was.
in. Yeah, it was, and it really showed all sorts of different facets of the West, and it was pretty. And there was some first rate stuff. I mean, Dean Mitchell was in it. George
Yeah.
Carlson was in
Yeah,
it.
no. Ed Mel was in it. Yeah,
Ed Mel
Howard
was in
Bush,
it.
I think.
I think Len Schmiel was in
Yep.
it. Matt was in it. Josh,
Yeah.
Logan.
Yeah, Logan was in it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And so, how many big paintings can you do in a year? I mean, I know it's different because every year is different and things come up, but
Yeah.
they're not that easy to perform, to put out that. I mean, that's one of the reasons I've always liked to get major works from artists, because I recognize there's only so many of those in your life, honestly.
Right. How many in a year? Maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Maybe about like that. Yeah, I was talking to Walter Matthia one time, and we'll always be off in a corner talking about, what we do and the pressures that we deal with producing.
Yeah, I like how you said that, because it's the same way I feel as a dealer. I hate dealers who call it a product. I really don't like that. I look at it as something completely different than that.
Yeah, or just a commodity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Walter said, it was true. He said a guy is lucky. So without the pressures, deadlines, and you got to have 5 or 6 for that and 5 or 6 for this. And he said a guy is lucky if he has 2 or 3 good ideas a year.
Yeah.
You're lucky if you come down, and it's really true.
Yeah.
So if you do get a really good idea, sometimes you just want to do them big.
Yeah.
Because they're worth it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would say that was the same for Dixon. He did a lot of 1620s, 2024s, some 2030s, some 3040s, but 4050s, not many.
Yeah.
And it's not that he couldn't do them. I think he just, it had to be something of merit. And he destroyed some of those, actually. Even big ones.
Wouldn't surprise me. I know Remington went back and destroyed a lot
Yeah.
of his.
Yeah.
Some that he'd seen hanging in galleries in Madison Avenue, New York, and go in and buy them and burn them.
Yeah. Have you ever done that? Get destroyed any of your paintings?
Usually I try to nip that in the bud. Like
Scrape them early?
Yeah, scrape them early, or just bag the idea, or it never worked in the study form.
Yeah.
But I must admit that when you're under pressure to produce and you are in a situation where, now it's a little bit easier to deal with now, but when I was coming up and trying to earn my stripes, you didn't tell a show, yeah, that one I promised you, that didn't work out. Because you're gone.
Yeah.
So I got used to trying to figure out, what is the problem here? Why isn't this working? And a lot of times those things can be solved, provided you have enough time to figure out exactly what. But you're right. Sometimes you just followed a bad idea too far.
Yeah.
And you should never have gone that far with it. But if you're stubborn,
you'll keep going.
You'll keep going. I'm going to make this. Of course, that's not usually a great idea. So balancing that workman mentality with the artist mentality, that's tough. That's really tough.
Yeah, I could see how they would be in conflict.
They are in conflict because you want to realize that, look, if I only painted when I felt like it or when I was inspired,
right,
probably wouldn't get much done.
No, you wouldn't.
And the only thing that's going to get you better is doing a lot of it.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That means probably some things that come off your easel are not going to be 10s. I don't know anybody that can paint 10s.
Nobody can. I can tell you that right now. As a dealer doing this 30 years, I can tell you, no artist can put out 10s. And if they are, then they're destroying a bunch of other ones or not showing them that were the 7s and 8s and 9s. Yeah.
But for a kid that didn't really have any formal training and just really loved this and wanted to do it, you just had to take yourself in hand and say, okay, look, I did the best I could. I worked hard on it. I had this is a solid idea. Did it meet every expectation I had? Look, I never had one that met any or all expectations. They're all like. When you can't make your hands say what's in your heart and your mind all the time, that's just a fact of life in this deal. Yeah, it's just I can count on one hand the number of paintings in 40 years that I said, you know what, I can't do any better than that. In fact, that's over my head. I don't even know where that came from.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing for artists to understand is that. Just like an athlete, there are days that you can go over your head. You can be better than you might really think you are, or maybe better than you really are.
Yeah, I think so.
I've seen it when I take an artist on,
Mhm.
unless I'm familiar with their work. I want to see a group of work. I don't want to see one painting or two paintings
Yeah.
because
Might be the only one they ever hit. Yeah,
I've seen that before, and you go, "Oh man, that
One
was
hit
so good."
wonders.
But where's the
yeah.
rest?
Yeah, there is a difference between doing a real killer and then having a body of work for years and years and
Yeah.
years where they're consistently good or consistently getting better or something.
Yeah.
Like that. That's a whole different ballgame. And then staying relevant
Yeah,
for a long time is
That's a
not
hard thing, too.
that is not easy.
that's a really hard thing.
Really
to do.
hard thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you have to build a body of work. You have to build a body of clientele.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the right galleries.
Right.
And you have to do some work too, just promoting it on your own, whether you want to or not. Artists do have to do those kind of things, just like sitting in front of a podcast. You'd probably rather be home going now than doing this, but it's one of those things to let people know, about the work.
I'll tell you the truth. I don't know that a whole lot of things I'd rather do than talk art with you. Really, but
Well, that's kind of you.
it's like what we talked about months ago in that first podcast. If you don't give yourself some chance to get better at this by just continuing to stay at it, there's going to be things that come off the easel that aren't maybe your A game all the time, but hopefully you learn something. But if you can't keep doing it, you'll never get a chance to get better.
Yeah. Same with this, just to being a podcast host, you have to learn how to do it and get better. And sometimes you go, could have done better. There's questions I should ask.
Well, there's, like I said, I think the vast majority of paintings that leave, you go, there's probably room for something there, but at the time I didn't see it. And a lot of times too, Mark, you go back in and you start working over these things and you find out that you're not helping.
You're overworking.
You're overworking
Yeah.
it, you're not helping it.
I've heard that from so many artists.
Yeah.
That they,
Be better to have an honest mistake
yeah,
that has some truth and honesty to it
yeah,
rather than one that's finessed into,
yeah,
yeah, okay, it's not wrong,
yeah,
but there's nothing right with it either.
And probably other artists can see when you've overworked it a bit, I bet.
Yeah, I think they can. Unfortunately, I don't get the opportunity much to have people come in because I'm out in Prescott and a little bit out of town, and I don't. Matt is he's a good ways away, and so is Ralph and Skip and all those guys. And so, but what we do sometimes, we'll send studies back and forth and say, "What do you think?" And or here's this particular passage or problem I'm working on. How would you approach this? What am I not seeing here? Randy Dutra, my friend Randy Dutra, is really good at that, about identifying problematic areas or
that's interesting.
saying, why don't you think about this? And I go, why didn't I think of that?
Because you look at it differently.
Right.
Ed Mel takes a mirror and
Exactly.
puts that in the back.
That is, I thought I invented that until I found out every artist in the world does that.
I don't know if everyone does, but I think it's a great way.
It's huge. What? Two things. It doubles the length of your studio.
Yeah.
So you can get way back and see what this looks like. But whenever the image is reversed, bad drawing will grab you by the throat.
Yeah.
That you don't see for some reason when you've been staring at it for a week or two and something's wrong and I can't look in the oh! It just jumps right out at you.
So what are you working on now? What's new and exciting? I mean, I know
getting
you've
ready
been-
for Autry right now.
Yeah,
so.
and that's third week or so of February.
Yeah, right. Yes, it is. And so I'm working on a large, it's a 3650 and it's got quite a little bit of ocean in it.
That's a big one.
Because
so.
painting livestock around the ocean is really fun, compelling, real. It happens. Very few people do it.
Yeah,
And I think after 40 years,
Yeah.
you're always looking for what's a little bit new slant that I can do.
that is, yeah, and that's true.
Not that many guys do it, and painting the ocean is just so much fun.
And so, do you have a title for that painting yet?
No, I don't, and I'm searching for one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And does the title for you come while you're painting the painting?
Sometimes.
Does it ever come before you paint the painting?
Yes, sometimes it does.
Yeah, and then clearly it's sometimes afterwards.
Sometimes it does.
And do you ever change a title? You thought you started with a certain title, and by the end of it, you go, it's not that
I'll tell you
anymore.
one thing I've done is I've named paintings the same thing.
Yeah, it
I've
makes
done
sense.
that once or twice.
Well, it's
without
easy to do
realizing.
because you like
Over
the title.
40 years.
Yeah.
You forget.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Do you keep a log of all your work?
Yeah, everything gets photographed, and of course, when it sells, it has to go down in the book, so I know the size, and
Yeah.
I don't always know where it went, but I'll know the month it was offered and stuff like that.
That's smart. I think that artists need to pay attention to do that.
I've had to refer to that a lot.
Yeah.
Because somebody who owns it will say, I can't remember what year we got this or something. I need it for insurance purposes, and I have the record.
And for history, quite frankly. I've got Dixon's log from 1915 to 1946.
Wow.
With all his paintings and what he sold them for, and the ones that he sold, ones he erased, ones he destroyed.
If I'd known.
Now you do. Now the world knows.
Oh my gosh.
Not available. It's not for sale.
Yeah.
But I will say, just going through that, pretty special when you're sitting there looking at a man's whole life, and what he did.
Some of those books that you're reading, exactly a chronology of what shows they were doing, what was in it, what prizes were won, things like that. It's really interesting, and you can tell when maybe they had an illness or something like.
Oh, yeah.
Edgar Payne was in poor health a lot.
Oh no, you can see it.
Yeah,
Or you can see when they're depressed.
Well, sometimes he had to paint in gouache because the oil. There was something about the toxicity of the oil that the doctors told him to lay off for a while. So he did a bunch of those little gouaches in Switzerland and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting to see the ups and downs. But
has there been a book done on you yet?
No.
There's another one. That is something that should be done. You're perfect for that.
Well,
in my opinion.
Len Schmiel did one, and I talked to him about it, and he just said it is an enormous undertaking.
It is
Enormous, and a real time suck.
It is.
Yeah, and if you're a control freak,
that's okay.
You want your hands in every single part of that. If it's going to be something of that magnitude, and boy, that would be.
Yeah, I could see one for you, though. I really could. You've got the body of work out there. You're a unique voice for sure in your profession.
Well, we'll see what happens. I don't know. I know Richard Polsky has talked about it.
He's a good writer.
He wanted to.
Yeah, he's a good writer.
And I just, this is about 10 years ago, and I said, Richard, just not yet. Maybe, but not now. So I don't really know what's... I was talking to Annie Laurie about that, my daughter, because she handles a lot of the media things for me. And it would be a fun thing to do, but I would have to have somebody who knows me intimately to micromanage that stuff, because I would want my hands in a lot of it. But
maybe your daughter.
Maybe.
She has a documentarian mindset.
She's a smart kid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm going to talk to her about it.
She knows me. She knows what I'll go for and what I won't go for.
Makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
It's a real time waste. I want to talk to Bill about this, and it's no way, and forget it. I'm not doing that. And she doesn't come at everything too with my bias, because I'm a stick in the mud about technology, and she's like, Dad, let me explain something. When I need things explained to me.
Like NFTs.
NFTs.
Yeah, there you go. See, there's a question mark on his head.
Okay, what's that?
So it's non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible. They're individual images, digital images, like Beeple. So Beeple is Winkleman is his name. He sold one of his digital art forms at Christie's for, I think it was $69 million.
It's more than I made last year.
Yeah. So it's a new way that you'll know NFTs soon, because it'll be a component of every artist's portfolio.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it is things that you'll sell digitally of your art. You'll retain all the rights to it, the copyrights to it and all that, but someone will have a one-of-one of the digital image. So, and a few artists have done this. Glenn Dean sold some. And, it's going to happen more and more for our field. It hasn't been done. It's not out there yet. I'm working on it with certain artists as well. But in the contemporary world, it's a huge thing, monstrous. We're talking billions of dollars being spent right now. So, and that's one of the reasons Facebook changed its name to Meta. So, which was a couple days ago. Because
And I just found that out.
yeah, well, they just made it public, but
And if Annie Laurie wasn't sitting there, I wouldn't have.
yeah. So there's going to be a metaverse, which is going to be a gallery. There's going to be a whole universe of places online,
Wow.
and people are going to have their art collection. They're going to have their gallery art collection. So they may have a bunch of Bill Antons that, the digital ones, and they'll go, "Wow, where'd you get that?" Yeah,
Crazy.
I own that one.
Wow.
I own Stirrup Deep. Yep.
Right over my head.
Yeah, right now, but the internet was probably over your head at one time too, and then
Yeah.
you're just like, "Oh yeah, no, that's what we do." But that is going to be. I'll talk to you more about that later. But
Yeah.
that is something that you will be embracing within 5 years
Wow.
and making money off of it. Yep, for sure.
Crazy.
It seems crazy, but think about everybody and how that is 30 and under. They all have a phone in their hand. They live online. Everything's online. Everything's digital. Then it becomes, man, maybe it's not so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's still, was collecting baseball cards crazy? I don't know. People might
Bitcoin.
say, yeah, well, that's how they'll be paid for is in cryptocurrency. It'll all be done on the blockchain. And here's the thing you'll like about it the most, as all artists like it the most. You can do a smart contract. So every time your digital art sells, you get a piece of the sale.
I'll be darned.
Every time.
Hmm.
So, try that over 100 years for your heirs. So it's a real thing. NFTs.
NFTs. Okay.
NFTs.
I know Annie Laurie will know what it is.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, she definitely will. 100%. I'll talk to her about that too. Well, I'm glad you came in and we got a kind of an impromptu Art Dealer Diaries podcast. Yeah.
Fun.
I mean, it's a great painting and
Appreciate it.
I'm thrilled to own it and thrilled to be able to sell it and represent it. It's an amazing thing to get to see, a piece that I know how hard that is to pull that off.
I can't thank you enough. It's
Yeah.
just an honor to be associated with you. I love your gallery, and every time I walk in the door, I'm like, "What did I come down here? I'm doing this." And
Yeah.
oh yeah, I brought one down. It seems to be secondary after a while, looking at all the great stuff you have.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's fun. I never know what I'm going to get. Like a Bill Anton.
Part of the thrill. Part of the thrill.
It is part of the thrill.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
And you've got the greats
it's fun.
of all time.
Yeah,
So,
it's fun.
and
Including living artists.
well, looking at the Duntons and the Gerald Cassidys and little Carl Oscar Borg gouache you've got sitting with the Adobe.
Yeah, a little Breen.
And the Wood Force is a beauty too.
Yeah.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, that is a nice one.
Wood Force was something else.
I know.
That guy was so good.
Got killed in a car wreck.
I know he did.
Yeah.
I asked your wife, do you know what his nickname was?
No, I don't know. What it is.
Weedy.
Weedy?
Weedy.
I didn't know
I
that.
don't know why.
Huh.
I'm sure it's explained in the book, but do you have the book that Northland Press put out?
Yeah, I have it somewhere. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
all his friends called him Weedy.
NC Wyeth also was killed in a car wreck.
Yes, he was. No, a train.
1945.
A train hit him.
Well, it was, car.
Yeah, and his grandson.
That's right. 45.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that thing that David McCullough did about 35, 40 years ago on the Wyeth family?
I did see that. And I probably saw it then.
Yeah.
I don't think I've
It's a
seen that.
horrific thing, but they talk about that.
Yeah.
How he was giving Nat, his son, all sorts of instruction about you've got to be very careful with that little boy in the car.
Well, on that happy note.
So you can edit that.
Yeah, no, we want to. I don't edit anything. So the Autry is the next place, probably, other than Medicine Man Gallery now, I guess, but that'll be the next place they'll be able to get one of your works.
Yeah, there's that, and then of course it'll be time for Pretty West. Of course, I'll be doing something with Brad in the spring.
Yeah. Do you always do a show with him every spring?
Well, it's a group show.
Okay.
The Painted West.
Okay.
So I'll have some things in there. I believe
Nice.
that's slated for March.
Yeah, okay.
And then it'll be time for Pretty West, and and want to get you some more things. So we'll just see what happens. And I just want to get out and ride again. It's time for me to get out to an outfit and do some riding and get a fresh look at some things.
You're always striving.
Well, it's just what a privilege it is to be able to do this for a living, just to be immersed in it 24/7 and be able to support a family doing it. It's just been a tremendous blessing. And then of course, as we've talked about before, to have a wife that is fully supportive and from the get-go, because in the early days, that ain't fun.
No,
For
you struggle.
Yeah, for a
A long
a
time.
young gal,
Yeah.
and Peggy came from from a sort of an upper middle class family.
Yeah. So they had big expectations, and you weren't.
Well, I think I told you I married their daughter and quit my job.
Yeah, that's.
I think I'll be an artist. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I can.
Just I talked to them about 15 years later. I said, "Did that make you nervous when I did that?" Because it did. I just did it. And Peggy was fully supportive, and they said, "Oh yeah." That made us nervous about that.
Did.
She said,
Yeah,
it worked out tremendously well. We're real proud of you, but yes, it made us nervous.
Yeah. And I get it.
Oh, I get it too.
Yeah.
I can't even believe they never said anything. They never said a word.
They trusted their daughter's instincts. That's why.
Wow.
That's why they did
Wow.
it. Yeah, I bet.
Great people.
Yeah, that's why. Well, I love your work. You're an interesting human being, and those are the most fascinating to me. Are the ones that don't fit in the cookie cutter.
Well, it's always fun to talk to you because you're enthusiastic about this.
I like
and that's
it.
what's missing from so many people that might be. But you're into this, and you can tell you love it. And so
I do.
those are the people I want to talk to.
Yeah, no, it's true. I do.
That love it
stuff.
like you do.
Yeah, because I come from a collector standpoint. I still do.
Yeah.
And I've never lost that.
Yeah, but it's not a commodity to you.
No, fuck. That was not.
Yeah.
Well, it is definitely not.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you're not looking at these things going, you could trade that in for a new Corvette or something like that. You don't look at stuff like that.
That would be a loss anyway.
I'm sure it
To
would.
sell a painting for a car, to trade a painting for a car, no.
Not exactly for one that
Especially if I really love the painting, that hurts the most.
it's never worth it.
Yeah, I think if you just follow whatever that is you love and really enjoy doing, then just like you're doing, I mean, you love getting up and painting, and you don't get tired of it. It's always
don't.
interesting.
It is. Because
And-
there's so much to learn. That's one of the biggest reasons I don't get tired of it, is because it's like anything else. I think the more you do it, the more you realize how much there is to know still.
Oh yeah.
And so it's never boring.
No.
And it's never by rote.
Same my business. I'm still learning. Something will come in and it'll just like confound me. I'm like, I don't know. And that's when you go and talk to other people. Go, okay, I don't know. Can you help me with this? I got something coming in this week that I'm not sure about.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do research to see if I can, know what to price it at.
And that's really what's wonderful too about the camaraderie of like-minded people, that you have the privilege of tapping into their minds, and they call you friends.
Yeah.
And wow, I'm just amazed at the guys that I get to know and talk to, and we're close. That's probably one of the best things about this.
I agree.
Is the people that you get to meet that are at absolute top of their game and are world renowned for what they do, and you're just their buddy.
And you can send them a painting and say, what's wrong with this, or I'm having an issue, and
and you'll get the straight
and you'll
dope. They'll tell you,
Yeah.
and it won't be. It'll be what you really need to hear. It won't be unkind, but what would happen if you did this?
Yeah.
And I was talking to my friend Randy. I sent him an ocean picture, a sketch, a few years ago, and he looked at that and said, "Boy, that's a great idea." And I said, "Well, I'm having trouble working the foreground and trying to get a lead in." And he said, "Why don't you think about just breaking up that oak brush with just a small little trail leading in, which is, a fairly, that's not terribly sophisticated thing to say, but for some reason it just didn't dawn on me, and I thought, of course, that's what I should do. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you're right. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's probably why you sent it, because you knew it needed something,
I wasn't seeing
but
it.
you couldn't see it.
Yeah. Or you've got just an area that's unresolved, and how could it be better? There's something missing, but I don't know what.
Yeah. Well, that's why you
have friends like that.
have
And
friends.
they're so analytical,
Yeah.
and they're so bright, and they're so schooled in this, and they've looked at a lot of painting.
And they got 40 or 50 years of experience as well.
You bet.
Yeah. Makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I use those resources all the
You
time.
bet.
And they use me.
You're crazy not to.
They use me.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah. On a regular
I'm
basis.
sure they do.
And I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because this doesn't belong to you. You
Right.
just pass this on.
Exactly.
And the best artists are the ones that are the most generous.
I agree.
There's no question about it.
Yeah.
I mean, Reynolds, that guy poured into me. And most of the time, in the first time I ever studied with him, I was 26. I didn't even know what he was talking about. I really didn't. I had no idea what he was talking about most of the time.
That's amazing.
But I watched him do a 1620 demo, And for some reason, he thought that the oak tree that was probably about 2/3 of the painting wasn't working. And I was sitting there watching him, and he scraped the whole thing off, and in about a minute and a half had an entirely different scene. And I remember going, because when you tend to be precious with these things when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And I got a nice effect on it.
I get it.
And he's like, nah, this ain't working.
Yeah.
And what if I did this? And you're looking at it going,
Yeah.
that was a real eye opener.
Yeah, it's experience.
It just, yeah. And somebody would ask him a question and he wouldn't give a direct answer. He'd say, I don't know, why don't you try that? And things like that at the time were frustrating because you want a roadmap. But you realize in the end, that was the right answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need 10 or 12 years of painting under your belt before you even know the right questions to ask.
Oh, I think so. I think you do need 10 years for sure.
Yeah.
You know, the proverbial 10,000 hours.
Right.
You know,
It
takes.
you really do.
Yeah.
And I can remember even after he was gone, being in the studio, and something he said came back to me, and I went, now I understand. I get what he meant. I didn't get it then,
Yeah.
but for some reason I memorized the words, and they just recycled through it, and now I get it.
His voice was in your head.
Yeah.
In your heart, maybe. Too.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a great, great guy. You know, a lot of people, he was gruff
Yeah.
and could be dismissive.
Yeah.
But he was just, sensitive to the point of tears when he was talking about painting.
Well, you can
or the
see it
beauty of the natural.
You can see it in his
exactly.
paintings,
You
know.
couldn't paint like that
Yeah.
if you didn't have a real soft spot.
Yeah, no, he loved nature.
He
It
did.
clearly
And boy,
shows in
did
his
he
landscapes.
observe it, and
Yeah.
he was like Ned and he was like Bill Reese. Didn't suffer fools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's taught a lot of people. I know that.
If not directly, by example.
Mark Maggiore. That was
Just-
the reason he went into Western art. I think is because he saw Bill's work, or he saw the Reynolds' work in Cowboy Hall of Fame, and it just stunned him.
Well, his stuff was head and shoulders, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd look at a lot of Western art, and then you'd see his and go,
You do. Yeah, no, that is true.
okay, there's something here.
On more than one occasion, I've done
absolutely.
that,
Sure,
and it's like,
sure.
oh yeah.
And then you realize, here's a guy that can paint anything. He
Yeah.
just chooses the Western subject
Yeah.
matter. But he is accomplished to do anything.
Yeah, his landscapes are just tremendous.
Just beautiful things. Beautiful, wonderful to look at, uplifting to look at.
Well, thank you for taking the
Thank you.
time. This will be great.
My pleasure.
And we'll get this one out before the Autry and before your show this time. Because the last time we did the podcast, we were supposed to be at the same time as your...
Hopefully we don't have another huge outbreak.
Yeah, no, maybe we're done with
Yeah.
most of that. I think
That
we
would
are.
be nice.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the
That'd be nice.
downward slide now.
Yeah.
We just have to deal with it, it's going to be an endemic thing to our
I think so.
country. But, we'll either all get vaccinated or have had it or both.
Mhm.
And, and we move on.
I'm in the both category.
Yeah, we're
I had it and
Americans.
I get-
Yeah, that's right. That's what you need to do. Yeah, if you do get it, you got to get vaccinated, and
Yeah.
that way you can move on.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing.
It's
Thank
always,
you.
Always
All
a
right.
pleasure. Thanks, Mark.
I'm going to show you.